podcast with English podcast MOVA.
Welcome back, everybody, to the deep dive. You know, sometimes we get really into the weeds on this show. And today we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about a very, very practical skill.
For sure.
Asking for directions in English.
Right. And it might seem simple, but when you're in a new place or even just trying to find a specific store in your own town, like knowing how to ask for and understand directions can make a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, think about all the times that, maybe you've been lost or confused trying to find a place.
Oh, totally.
And it can be really stressful, right?
Absolutely. And it can even prevent you from fully enjoying a trip or experiencing something new if you're constantly worried about getting lost.
Exactly. So for this deep dive, you've pulled together some really interesting resources, I think, that are specifically designed to help English learners navigate these kinds of everyday situations.
Yeah, I tried to focus on the materials that would be most practical for people who are actually out there using English in the real world.
Yeah, and that's what we really want to do with this deep dive. It's equip you with the phrases and the understanding that you need to confidently ask for and receive directions in English.
And feel comfortable doing it. Because I think sometimes people can get a little nervous about speaking up and asking for help.
Oh, for sure.
But it's so important to be able to do that.
Yeah, so let's jump right in. What are some good opening lines to use when you realize you might be lost or heading in the wrong direction?
Well, the first thing is to be polite, right? You're asking someone for help.
Right.
So starting with a phrase like, excuse me, is always a good idea.
Excuse me.
Excuse me.
Got it.
And then you can follow that up with something like, can you tell me how to get to? And then fill in the blank with the place you're looking for.
Right. So for example, excuse me, can you tell me how to get to the train station?
Simple
and direct.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you can adapt that to any location. Like, excuse me, can you tell me how to get to the nearest coffee shop?
Perfect. Now, what about if you're looking for something that's essential and nearby?
Oh, yeah. Then you can use a phrase like, where is the nearest? And then, again, you fill in the blank with whatever you're looking for. So, if you need a pharmacy, you could say, where is the nearest pharmacy?
Where is the nearest bank?
Exactly.
Okay, those are good ones. What if you think you might be on the right track, but you just want to be sure? Like you see a sign that you think is pointing you in the right direction.
Yeah. Then you could ask, is this the right way to? And then the place.
So is this the right way to the museum?
Exactly. And that way you can either confirm that you're going in the right direction or get some clarification if you're not.
Right. What if you need to figure out how far away something is?
That's a good one. You can ask, how far is from here?
So, for example, how far is the airport from here?
Exactly. And that can help you decide if you need to take a taxi or if you can walk.
Right. And what about if you just need a general sense of direction? Like you don't even know where to start.
Right. Sometimes you just need a starting point.
Yeah.
In those cases, you can ask, could you point me in the right direction to?
Could you point me in the right direction to the shopping mall?
Exactly. And often a simple gesture is all you need to get headed in the right direction.
Right. You mentioned politeness before. Starting with, excuse me, how important is that really?
Oh, it's incredibly important because you're essentially asking a stranger for a favor.
Yeah.
So being polite shows respect and it really increases the chances that they'll be willing to help you.
And you could even take it a step further and say, excuse me, could you possibly?
Right. That adds an extra layer of politeness and shows that you're really appreciative of their time and effort.
Okay. So we've talked about how to ask for directions.
Yeah.
But now let's talk about the other side of it.
Understanding.
Yeah. What are some common phrases that people use when giving directions, and how can we make sure that we understand them?
Well, one of the most common phrases you'll hear is, go straight ahead.
Go straight ahead, meaning what? Just keep walking.
Exactly. Just continue walking in the direction you're already facing.
Okay. Simple enough. What about when you need to change direction?
Then you'll likely hear either turn left or turn right.
Okay, so turn left, turn right, pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it tells you which way to turn at the next intersection or at a specific landmark they might mention.
Okay, so turn left, turn right, go straight ahead. What about if they're trying to tell you that you've almost reached your destination? What might they say?
You might hear something like, it's on your left or it's on your right.
Oh, okay, so that means it's coming up soon.
Exactly. It means the place you're looking for is on that side of the street.
Okay. And what if they want to give you a sense of distance using streets?
They might say something like, walk 2 blocks or walk 3 blocks, depending on how far it is.
So that means walk past 2 streets.
Exactly. You'll pass 2 intersecting streets before you reach your destination.
Got it. What about if the place is like right at an intersection? How would they describe that?
Oh, they might say it's at the corner of an Oresan.
So like it's at the corner of Main Street and First Avenue.
Exactly.
Okay. What about when people say that you can't miss it?
Yeah.
Have you ever heard that?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
And it's usually meant to be reassuring, like, oh, it's so obvious you'll definitely see it.
Right.
But sometimes what's obvious to one person isn't obvious to another.
Right. And sometimes it's like, I missed it.
Exactly. So even if they say you can't miss it, it's still a good idea to pay close attention to the other details they give you.
Right. So when you're listening to directions, what are the key things you should be focusing on?
I think the sources all emphasize paying close attention to those directional words. Left, right, straight. Try to visualize the path in your mind as they're describing it.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, and pay attention to any landmarks they mention as well. Those can be really helpful visual cues.
Okay, let's put all this into practice. We have a dialogue here where a tourist is asking for directions to the nearest metro station. Let's break down what happens and how these phrases are used in a real-world situation.
Okay, sounds good.
So the tourist starts by saying, "Excuse me, can you tell me how to get to the nearest metro station?"
Perfect. Polite, clear, and using one of those key phrases we talked about.
Right. And the local responds with, "Sure, go straight ahead for 2 blocks, then turn left. The metro station will be on your right."
Nice. Giving clear directions with those important directional words. Straight ahead, turn left, on your right.
Easy to follow. The tourist then asks, "Thank you. Is it far from here?"
That's a good follow-up question. They're making sure they understand the distance involved.
Right. And the local replies, "No, it's only a 5-minute walk."
Perfect. Giving a clear estimate of the time it will take to get there.
Then we have some standard polite expressions to wrap up the conversation. The tourist says, "Great, thanks a lot." And the local says, "You're welcome. Have a nice day."
Nice, concise little interaction there.
Yeah, it really shows how these phrases can be used in a natural conversation.
Yeah, and how a few simple phrases can get you where you need to go.
Exactly. Now, moving beyond the specific phrases, what are some general tips for asking for and understanding directions more effectively?
Well, as we mentioned earlier, always start with, "Excuse me."
Right.
It really does make a difference in terms of how people respond to you. And don't be afraid to use those extra polite phrases like, "Could you possibly?"
Right. It never hurts to be extra polite, especially when you're asking for help. What about on the listening end?
I think the most important thing is to actively listen. Really focus on those keywords. Left, right, straight.
Okay. And what if you just don't understand the directions that someone has given you? Like, what's the best way to handle that?
Don't be afraid to ask them to repeat. Just say something like, "Could you repeat that, please?" Or, "Sorry, I didn't quite catch that." It's much better to ask for clarification than to end up getting lost.
Right. No shame in asking for clarification. What about using maps or phones? Like if you have a map app on your phone, is it okay to show that to the person you're asking for directions?
Absolutely. You can say something like, "Could you show me on the map?" And that can be really helpful, especially if you're a visual learner.
Yeah, sometimes seeing it visually can make all the difference.
Right.
Okay, now we have another short dialogue here.
Okay.
This one's between Lisa and a stranger who's also looking for the train station. Let's see what we can learn from this interaction. So Lisa starts off by saying, "Excuse me, could you help me? I'm looking for the train station."
Okay, so slightly different phrasing here, but still very polite and clear.
Yeah.
She's using, "Could you help me?" instead of, "Can you tell me?" But it serves the same purpose.
Right, and she's also using that phrase, "I'm looking for."
Which is a very natural way to express that you need help finding something.
Okay. Now the stranger responds with directions that are pretty similar to what we heard in the first dialogue. "Sure. Walk straight ahead for 2 blocks, then turn left. You'll see the train station on your right."
Right. Sticking with those core directional words. Straight ahead, turn left on your right.
And now here comes a key moment. Lisa confirms the directions by repeating them back.
Got it. So I walk straight for 2 blocks, then turn left, and it's on my right.
I love that she does that. It's such a good strategy for making sure you've understood everything correctly. And it gives the other person a chance to correct any misunderstandings.
Right. It shows that you're actively listening and that you want to make sure you get it right.
Exactly.
And the stranger confirms exactly.
Ah, perfect.
And then we have the usual polite thank yous and goodbyes.
Nice and simple.
So what are the key takeaways from this second dialogue?
I think the biggest one is the importance of confirming the directions by repeating them back. It just ensures that you're both on the same page.
Right. And we also saw another way to say I understand, which is that casual phrase, got it.
Got it. Exactly.
Okay.
It's a very natural way to confirm that you've understood something. And we saw that phrase, I'm looking for, which is another way to express that you need help finding something.
Right. It's good to have a variety of phrases in your toolkit.
Now, our sources also talk about the importance of practicing these skills. What are some ways that our listeners can practice asking for and understanding directions in English?
Well, role-playing with a friend is always a great way to practice.
Oh, yeah.
You can take turns being the person asking for directions and the person giving them.
Right.
And you can try different scenarios, like asking for directions to a restaurant or a store or a park.
What if you don't have someone to practice with?
You can still practice on your own.
Oh, really? Huh?
Yeah, just imagine yourself in different situations. Like, picture yourself being in a new city and needing to ask for directions to a landmark.
Okay.
And then think about how you would phrase the question and how you would respond to the direction.
Right. So like mental rehearsal.
Exactly. It might sound silly, but it can actually be really helpful in building your confidence.
Okay. Now a question for you, our listener. Think back to a time when you had to ask for directions. Maybe you were in a foreign country, or maybe you were just in a different part of your own city.
Yeah.
How would you approach that situation now?
Now that you have these phrases and strategies in your back pocket.
Exactly. Think about how you would phrase the question, how you would listen to the directions, and how you would make sure you understood everything correctly.
It's a good opportunity to reflect and see how much you've learned.
So to wrap things up today, we've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about key phrases for asking for directions.
Yeah.
We've talked about how to understand the directions that people give you. And we've talked about some general tips for navigating these kinds of situations effectively.
Right. And hopefully you feel more confident and prepared to ask for directions in English now.
Exactly. So let's do a quick review of those key phrases. For asking for directions, remember you can use, "Excuse me, can you tell me how to get to?"
Where's the nearest?
"Is this the right way to?"
How far is from here?
And, "Could you point me in the right direction to?"
And don't forget that all-important excuse me at the beginning.
Right. And remember, you can make it even more polite by adding, "Could you possibly?"
Exactly.
Now, for understanding directions, listen closely for those key words. Go straight ahead. Turn left, turn right.
It's on your left. It's on your right.
Walk number blocks.
It's at the corner of...
And of course, that classic, "You can't miss it."
Though, as we discussed, you might still miss it.
Right. And remember those pro tips? Actively listen. Don't hesitate to ask for repetition. And if you have a map or a phone, use it.
Visual aids can be so helpful.
Absolutely. Now for our final thought today. Consider how mastering even these seemingly simple phrases can really empower you to navigate new environments and connect with people when you're speaking English. It's about more than just getting from point A to point B.
It's about feeling confident and independent in your ability to communicate and explore the world around you.
Exactly. So what other everyday English skills might you explore that could unlock even more possibilities for you?
That's something to think about.
It is. And we'll catch you next time for another Deep Dive.